Welcome back to the Red Wings Report with Strings and Pucks. This is Jeremy Laura. If you're new here, please click like, please click subscribe. Thank you for everyone who's tuned in the last few days. We added 100 new subscriptions in just over 48 hours, so thank you to everybody who stopped by. So there was so much excitement with the three prospects who made it to Detroit's paper roster anyway. Brandsegg-Nygard, Sandin-Pellikka, and Emmitt, Finnie, of course. And a couple of you had comments that essentially, okay, so who's next? How are you going to get Danielson into the mix? You know, what about Van Riemsdyk? Of course, Major. And kind of a forgotten player in this has been Boyum, where Boyum's prospect game and training camp, to me, projected him ahead of Wallinder and Tuomisto. He's very, very good at skating. He has an excellent shot. He had multiple goals, skating down and scoring, but he gets injured. Injury obviously opens up for opportunity. So Danielson, you know how many times, if you visited Hockey Hot Stove, if you visited this channel in the past, I've said ad nauseum, Danielson was an ideal candidate for Larkin's wing. To me, it was a similar path to Marco Kasper last year, where you bring up a centerman, he works really well on the wing. Danielson's 200-foot game, and to me still is the best in Detroit's pipeline for players not in Detroit right now, so especially Grand Rapids. Danielson, he got hurt, and we don't know the extent of those injuries, but I do expect him to be, once healthy, on the top of the call-up list for forwards. Now that the three have made it ahead of him, the two forwards in particular, Finnie and Brandsegg-Nygard, getting there is tough enough. Staying in the NHL is even more difficult. So we're going to see in this first month how these guys hold up, in particular the first 10 games, and you guys know why, because that's kind of that audition period to see if you want to burn a year of the ELC. So Finnie and Brandsegg-Nygard are going to have to show that they can stick with the team. I think they can do it. I think there are a lot of other guys that would be waiver bound / reassignment bound before them. In particular, you guys have mentioned Comfer, Berggren, and Rasmussen. So these guys have to stick, or else they could be reassigned, and then eventually Danielson would get a shot or a call-up. It's get your game back on track, show that you're that player, and then wait for injury. This first set of games in October, 13 games, almost a game every other night, starting on the 9th. And here are the teams: Montreal, Toronto, Florida, Tampa Bay, Edmonton. So those first 6 games, all teams that made it to the postseason, and 2 of them were in the finals, Florida and Edmonton, pardon me. Then you got Buffalo and the Islanders, St. Louis, LA Kings, and Anaheim to end October. You're cramming so much into all those games, but those first 6 in particular, you're going to have to go 500 in that first stretch. You have to find a way to start strong. Florida's dealing with some injuries. Tampa, we don't know. But this is your competition. Basically, think of teams having to win in 10-game segments, having to get the equivalent of 12 points or 6 wins every 10-game segment on average. Obviously, you'll have hot streaks and dry streaks. But when you're looking at 6 of 10 wins over 80 games, that would get you 48 wins, 96 points, and then the other 2 games to get to 100 points, and let's say 100 points is the breaking point, you have to win 6 of every 10 games. So you have to go over 500, but for this beginning stretch, those first 6 games, they need to at least split it. Or at least get the points equivalent of basically 6 points out of 12 in those first 6 games. With those crammed so close together and some travel coming up, injuries are going to happen. We've already seen Kopp get dinged up. Mazur got reassigned because of injury. So Danielson could well be an early call-up depending on how healthy he is, and the same for Mazur. If guys start falling off with injury, which can easily happen with some of the veterans that you have in Detroit. So I still expect Danielson, when healthy, to be at the top of the list on the call-ups, but he is going to have to wait for a call-up at this point. They're not going to just automatically make a spot for him. He's basically in a key position. So let's say Kopp hits the shelf, Comfer hits the shelf, Danielson comes up. If he plays well enough, we've now seen precedent where you could try to move on. And I wouldn't be opposed to putting Comfer on waivers and seeing if you could reassign him to Grand Rapids or see if there's a deal out there for him. So Danielson, still my top call-up. On that list, you guys are asking about Berggren. I do not think Berggren would make it through waivers. He'd get picked up. So if you're not going to use him, if for some reason the team and he just don't see eye to eye, there is interest in him as a player, and you should be able to get something for him. The Red Wings right now have approximately $11 million in cap space, so there are deals to be made. Again, they were still rumored to be looking at Erik Karlsson. I wouldn't rush into anything right now. See how your defense is playing, but you have more than enough room to facilitate something like that if you want to. But Berggren, if they move on from him, to me it has to be a trade, and give him a chance to see if he can produce at this point. Rasmussen, I do not think they're going to move on from. Guys, I know there's a lot of people that aren't thrilled with him, but for what he offers in the bottom six, he gives them the player that they want when he's physical, when he's blocking shots, when he's on the penalty kill. So those are my thoughts there. Carter Mazur next. This is such a disappointment for him. Injuries have already derailed so much of his career. He's put on 15 pounds of muscle. He's the player that I think they wanted for the bottom six, and that's why I think Finnie was able to jump out and grab that spot, even though he's still being slated next to Larkin, that Finnie can play up and down the lineup. So not only does Mazur have to get healthy again, he has to stay healthy and grab that spot again. Lombardi, I still put him very high on the call-up list, and he's healthy as far as we know. So injuries are going to factor in. Danielson's still at the front of the line when he's healthy. Mazur, this is a real disappointment for him. But it is now on those three prospects to keep their jobs. They got there, they have to stay there. Beyond that, this opening schedule, it's very, very concerning to me. Oh, Shai Boyum, I do want to touch on this. Boyum, if he can get healthy again, to me, a healthy Shai Boyum is at the front of the call-up line for defensemen. Although now you have Hall and Gustafson. I haven't seen them get reassigned yet, but they potentially could be assigned to Grand Rapids, so they'd probably be pretty high on the call-up list as well. But Boyum healthy, to me, he's slightly ahead of Wallander on the call-up list, but he and Wallander are the call-up guys that aren't, waiver bound like Hall and Gustafson were. So if Boyum can get healthy, I do expect him to get looks this season. I do expect Wallander to get looks this season. Tuomisto, I love his shot. I love how physical he can be, but his skating is a problem. He has to get to the point where his skating doesn't put him at a deficit for the call-up. But I still expect with injuries he'll get some looks. This schedule in October, Detroit has had such bad starts to the year that even their 7-game win streaks after McClellan came to town weren't enough to get them over the hump. And they need to start strong, and the goals against are killing them. In the Yzerman era, there's only been 1 year of positive goal differential. That was the year where they were in it right until the last day, 2 seasons ago now, against Washington to get in. So if Gibson and Talbot can lock it down and get them to at least an even/positive goal differential, and the team gets a strong start, you've got the Olympics coming up, and that can do a lot to change the face of the league. Florida's got injuries. A lot of teams are getting injured. So Detroit needs to start strong. They need to go at least 500 in these first 6 games. And then on the trip, Buffalo, New York, St. Louis, Los Angeles, and Anaheim, they need to take the majority of those. I don't mean a sweep necessarily, but of those 6 games, they really need the equivalent of 4 wins plus an overtime. So 9 points out of 12. If they go 500 in the first 6, they need to grab 9 to 12 in the second 6. And this first month is going to be critical out of the gate. So by the end of this month, 5, 9, 12, you will know if these players made it past their 10 games by the beginning of November. So this is such a big, important stretch. So now that the excitement is dying down a little bit, the reality of how well they have to perform in a brutal opening schedule with 6 playoff teams and 2 finals teams, plus the reigning Stanley Cup champions of that, obviously, it's incredibly difficult. It's incredibly taxing. They have to come out the gate strong. Danielson and Mazur are going to get opportunities, but they have to get healthy. But again, you now have a full roster, so something has to change. Someone has to underperform or get hurt for them to get that call up. They're not just automatically going to get called up the second that they're healthy. Boyum needs to get healthy. Wallander probably will get a look at some point. And I don't know if they're still working on a deal to bring in a top 4 league defenseman. I'm not opposed to it. As good as Sandin-Pellikka looks coming in, it would not be bad to get a left side defenseman, because I do not like Sherrod on the top line. And although, I mean, Johansson could slot in there with Edvinsson and Pellikka, but it feels like the left side, if they make a deal, that would be a great side to fill. So let me know your thoughts. How do they need to hit the ground running? Do you think they can take 3 of 6 of those openers? Think they can take 4 of 6 of the next 6 games and get the points that they need? How do they hit the ground running? Where does this factor in? But for now, Danielson and Mazur, Boyum and Wallander, they're going to have to wait for their opportunity and get healthy and be strong enough for that call-up. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll do another update tomorrow.